Emily sat alone in the dimly lit hospital room, the weight of her choices pressing down on her like an unbearable force. The baby lay swaddled in a bassinet beside her, innocent, unaware of the wreckage left in the wake of his birth. The sister she had sacrificed everything for was nowhere to be found. Mark, the man whose child she had carried, refused to even sign the birth certificate without a paternity test. And Robert, her husband, the man she had once built a life with, was gone. Desperation clawed at her chest as she picked up her phone with trembling hands. She dialed Robert's number, praying, hoping, please, just pick up. The line clicked. "What do you want, Emily?" His voice was calm, distant. "Cold." Tears streamed down her face. I don't know what to do," she sobbed. "Robert, please, I have no one." A silence stretched between them before he finally exhaled. "You told me it was your body, your choice," he said quietly. "Now, this is my life, my choice." The call disconnected. Emily let out a strangled cry, realizing with bone-deep certainty, this was the end. She had gambled everything and lost. If this story hit you, drop a 1 in the comments. Let's talk about choices, consequences, and the cost of betrayal. And if you haven't yet, subscribe, share, and stick around. More stories like this are coming. Robert wiped the sweat from his brow as he leaned against his truck, taking in the sight of the house he'd been working on all day. The Texas sun was relentless, but after 20 years in construction, he was used to it. His hands, rough from years of labor, had built dozens of homes, each one a symbol of security, stability, and hard work. That's what he believed in. A man provides. A man protects. At 42, Robert was exactly where he thought he'd be in life. He owned a small but successful contracting business in Austin, Texas. He had a house, a real home, not just walls and a roof, but a place filled with laughter, with memories. Inside that house were the 3 people who mattered most, his kids. Michael, 10, Ava, 8, and little Noah, 5, were his world. Every late night, every sore muscle, every extra hour he put in, it was all for them. And then there was Emily. He had loved her fiercely once. Maybe he still did. But lately, something felt off. She had always been warm, attentive, present. But now? Now she was constantly distracted, her phone in her hand more often than not, her voice low and urgent whenever she spoke to her twin sister, Jessica. Robert had caught snippets of their conversations, words like timing, doctor's appointments, procedure, but every time he asked, she'd just brush him off with a quick kiss and a vague, just family stuff, babe. He wanted to believe that. He wanted to believe her. But something deep in his gut told him that he was about to find out exactly how much had changed. That evening, the house smelled like home, something warm in the oven, kids laughing in the next room, the faint hum of the TV in the background. Robert loosened his tool belt, rolling his shoulders as he walked into the kitchen. Emily stood at the counter, scrolling through her phone, barely looking up when he entered. "Hey," he said, planting a quick kiss on her cheek. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Robert exhaled slowly. Enough was enough. "You've been on your phone a lot lately," he said, keeping his tone light but firm. "Everything okay?" Emily didn't even hesitate. "Oh, yeah. I've just been talking to Jess a lot." He leaned against the counter, studying her. "About what?" She finally put her phone down and looked at him, her expression almost excited. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something." Robert folded his arms across his chest. "All right. I'm listening." Emily tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, her voice casual, too casual. "I've decided to be a surrogate for Jessica." The words didn't register at first. "You've decided?" he repeated slowly. She nodded, still scrolling on her phone like she'd just told him she was picking up groceries. "Yeah. I mean, we're identical twins, so it's practically like she's carrying her own baby." Robert stared at her, his mind struggling to keep up. "Hold on," he said, standing straighter. You're saying you're going to carry Jessica and Mark's baby? She finally met his eyes. Yes. His jaw tightened. And when exactly were you planning on discussing this with me? Emily sighed, setting her phone down. Robert, this isn't about you. It's my body, my choice. His stomach dropped. This wasn't just a decision. This was a betrayal. Robert felt his chest tighten, his pulse pounding in his ears. Emily, we're married. You don't get to make a life-changing decision like this without even talking to me. She exhaled sharply, crossing her arms. Robert, this isn't about you. It's my body, my choice. Something inside him snapped. Your body? Emily, this isn't about a haircut or a tattoo. You're planning to grow another man's child inside you for 9 months. You think that doesn't affect me? That doesn't affect our kids? She rolled her eyes, shaking her head like he was being dramatic. I knew you'd react like this. That's why I waited to tell you. His stomach twisted. Waited. So you weren't even going to ask me? Just drop it on me after it was too late to stop? Emily scoffed. I didn't ask because I don't need your permission, Robert. This is something I want to do for Jessica. She and Mark have been trying for years. This is a beautiful thing. Robert let out a sharp, humorless laugh. Beautiful? You lied to me, Emily. You planned this behind my back. And now you expect me to just accept it. She threw her hands up. God, Robert, why do you always have to make everything about you? You're being selfish. I thought you'd understand. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. You thought I'd understand you carrying another man's baby without even asking me first? Emily's jaw tightened, her voice cold. Well, if you're so against it, maybe we need to rethink this marriage. And there it was. The ultimatum. His worst fears, spoken out loud. Robert lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing. The woman beside him, the one he had built a life with, raised children with, had just made it clear that his opinion, his feelings, didn't matter. She had looked him in the eye and told him this was her decision, not theirs. He had always believed marriage was a partnership, that major life choices were something they tackled together. But tonight, he realized that somewhere along the way, Emily had stopped seeing it that way. Sleep never came. By morning, exhaustion settled deep in his bones, but the weight in his chest was heavier. He went through the motions, making breakfast for the kids, packing their lunches, forcing a smile, but everything felt different. The house, once warm and familiar, felt like a stranger's home. Emily acted as if nothing had changed, moving around the kitchen like her announcement the night before had been a simple dinner plan. Later that afternoon, Robert drove across town to meet his best friend, Jake, at their usual spot, a quiet bar they'd been going to for years. The moment Robert slid into the booth, Jake took one look at him and frowned. Jesus, man. You look like hell. Robert let out a tired chuckle, rubbing his face. Feels about right. Jake signaled for 2 beers, then leaned in. All right, spill it. Robert hesitated, unsure of where to even begin. Emily, she's agreed to be a surrogate for Jessica. Jake raised a brow. And you're just now finding out? Robert nodded, jaw tightening. She made the decision weeks ago. Never talked to me. Just dropped it on me like it was nothing. Jake let out a low whistle. Damn. And what did she say when you pushed back? Robert clenched his fists. She told me it's her body, her choice. And that if I have a problem with it, maybe we need to rethink our marriage. Jake leaned back, shaking his head. Man, I hate to say it, but if she's making life-changing decisions without you, you're already not in the marriage. The words hit Robert like a punch to the gut because deep down, he knew Jake was right. Later that week, as the tension in the house grew heavier than the humid Austin air, Robert found himself alone in the study, seeking refuge from the constant echoes of a betrayal he still couldn't fully comprehend. The soft hum of the computer was the only sound breaking the silence when his curiosity, mixed with a desperate need for answers, drove him to search through Emily's laptop, a device she had carelessly left open one night. His heart pounded as he clicked through folder after folder until, almost by accident, he uncovered a hidden directory labeled private. With trembling hands, he opened it and was met with a series of emails and instant messages that painted a damning picture. The messages were between Emily, Jessica, and someone identified only as Mark. As he read through the exchanges, his stomach sank with every new revelation. The emails, once cryptic, became brutally clear. Jessica and Mark had discussed altering their original plan of using a donor for the surrogacy. Instead, they had decided that Mark, Jessica's husband, would be the biological father. The revelation was like a cold slap across his face, and in that moment, Robert felt as if the ground had vanished from beneath him. His eyes scanned the messages repeatedly, each one confirming his worst fears. There were details of doctor's appointments, discussions about genetic compatibility, and even subtle hints of excitement from both Jessica and Mark about the prospect of the child sharing physical traits with Mark. A particular email caught his attention, its subject line cryptically reading "New Beginnings," which detailed their decision and the reasons behind it. It was clear that this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment idea, it was something that had been meticulously planned behind his back. The shock slowly turned into a deep, searing anger. "So my wife is carrying my brother-in-law's child, and I wasn't even worth a conversation," he murmured to himself, the words reverberating in his mind as if echoing the complete disregard for his feelings and their shared future. Every sentence he read felt like another nail in the coffin of his trust. How could she believe that her decision wouldn't affect him, wouldn't affect their family? The realization struck him with relentless force. This was not just a betrayal of marital vows but a profound rejection of his role in their relationship. The messages made it clear that Emily had not only made this decision without him, but she had also sought validation and even excitement from Jessica and Mark, treating her body and her future as commodities to be traded among those who already had plans in place. His mind raced, imagining the secret conversations, the clandestine meetings, and the meticulous planning that he had been completely excluded from. The thought that the child growing inside her would genetically tie her to another man, Mark, was unbearable. Robert felt a profound sense of loss, not only of trust but of his identity as a partner, a father, and a man who believed in shared decisions. The betrayal was total, and with each new email, the chasm between what he had thought their marriage was and what it truly had become widened into an abyss of isolation and hurt. The discovery left him questioning everything, his past, his present, and whether he would ever be able to rebuild the future they had once planned together. Robert sat in the dimly lit living room, the glow of Emily's laptop still burning in his mind, his hands clenched so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Every word he had read echoed like a war drum in his skull. His wife, the woman he had trusted with everything, had not only decided to carry another man's child without his consent, she had chosen her sister and brother-in-law's happiness over their own marriage. Worse, she had done it with an almost surgical detachment, as if he was nothing more than an obstacle to be ignored rather than a husband to be considered. He heard her footsteps before he saw her, the familiar shuffle of slippers against hardwood as she entered the room, stretching after what he assumed had been another long phone call with Jessica. She didn't notice the way his body was coiled, his jaw locked. She barely even looked at him before she moved toward the kitchen. "Emily," Robert said, his voice steady but cold. She paused, finally turning to him, her expression unreadable. "We need to talk." She sighed, rubbing her temples. "Can we not do this right now? I just got off the phone with Jess, and I'm exhausted." Robert stood, his heart pounding, but his voice remained eerily calm. "No. We're doing this now. I read the emails, Emily. All of them." For the first time, he saw something flicker in her eyes, panic, guilt, something, but it was gone in an instant, replaced by calculated indifference. She folded her arms, shifting her weight onto one leg. "And?" His blood boiled at her tone. "And? And? You let another man get you pregnant, Emily. And you didn't even have the decency to tell me. Do you have any idea what you've done?" She scoffed, shaking her head. "Oh my God, Robert, Don't be dramatic, it's not like I slept with Mark. This is a medical procedure, not some sordid affair. His breath caught in his throat. You actually think that makes it better? He let out a hollow laugh, running a hand through his hair. Emily, you're pregnant with another man's child. That's not just a medical procedure, that's something you should have discussed with your husband. Her eyes darkened, and suddenly, she was on the offensive. Oh, so that's what this is about? Your ego, she snapped. You're making this bigger than it is because you can't handle that I made a decision without you. This isn't about our marriage, Robert, this is about me helping my sister. Why can't you just be supportive? His stomach turned. Gaslighting. He recognized it instantly, the way she twisted the situation to make him the villain for not being okay with what she had done. He exhaled slowly, trying to keep his voice level, but the betrayal burned through every word. Supportive? You want me to be supportive of the fact that you lied to me? That you planned this entire thing behind my back? He took a step closer, searching her face for any sign of remorse, but there was none. You don't even care about how this affects me, do you? Emily's lip curled in frustration. Robert, I knew you'd react like this. That's why I didn't tell you earlier, because you're acting irrational, you're trying to make this about our marriage when it isn't, it's about something bigger than us. He stared at her, his chest rising and falling, realization hitting him like a freight train. She wasn't going to change her mind. She wasn't going to apologize. She wasn't even going to acknowledge what she had done to him. His voice was quiet when he finally spoke. You know what? You're right, Emily. This is bigger than us. Because it's the end of us. Her arms tightened across her chest, but he caught the flicker of fear in her eyes. Robert, don't be ridiculous. I'm done, he said simply, stepping back, the weight of finality settling over him. Whatever this marriage used to be, is over. For the first time, Emily looked shaken. You're seriously going to throw away our marriage over this? Robert met her gaze with a stare so cold she flinched. You already did. Robert didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling while Emily slept soundly beside him, as if she hadn't just destroyed everything they had built together. He listened to the steady rhythm of her breathing, the same sound that had once comforted him on nights when work stress or financial worries had kept him awake. Now, it felt like a cruel reminder of how little she cared. She had made her choice. Now, he was making his. By sunrise, Robert had already called David Reynolds, a divorce attorney he knew through a former client. The meeting was set for that afternoon. He went through his day in a daze, barely registering conversations, his hands working on autopilot at the job site. His mind, however, was laser-focused. He had spent years providing for his family, thinking they were a team. Now, he saw things clearly. Emily didn't see him as a partner. She saw him as an inconvenience in her plans. When he walked into David's office, the older man shook his hand firmly and gestured for him to sit. Tell me everything, he said, leaning back in his chair. Robert didn't hold back. He explained the surrogacy, the deception, and how Emily had dismissed him like his feelings didn't matter. He expected David to be surprised, maybe even skeptical, but the lawyer simply nodded. I've seen this before, he said. Spouses making unilateral decisions, then gaslighting their partner when they don't go along with it. Robert exhaled slowly. I don't want a long, drawn-out fight. I want custody of the kids. I want my house. And I want her out of my life. David nodded, already scribbling notes. Given the circumstances, we have a strong case. 2 days later, Emily was served with divorce papers at home, just as she was making dinner. Robert watched from across the room as she opened the envelope, her expression shifting from confusion to pure fury. She turned to him, eyes blazing. Are you serious? Robert didn't flinch. Dead serious. Emily slammed the divorce papers onto the kitchen counter, her face twisted in disbelief. You're being ridiculous, Robert. You're actually willing to throw away 15 years of marriage over this? Robert didn't react. He just leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, watching her unravel. There was a time when her frustration, her anger, would have made him want to fix things, to calm her down and reassure her that they would work through it. But that time had passed. Emily scoffed when he didn't respond. "You'll get over this," she said dismissively, tossing the papers aside like they meant nothing. "You're just acting out right now. You don't actually want a divorce." Robert let out a short, humorless laugh. "She still doesn't get it." She moved around the kitchen like everything was fine, chopping vegetables for dinner, calling the kids in to wash their hands. It was as if she believed that if she ignored the divorce long enough, it would somehow cease to exist. For the next few days, she carried on like nothing had changed. She still kissed him absent-mindedly on the cheek when she walked by, still asked him to pick up groceries, still slept on his side of the bed like it was her right. Robert, however, was already gone, mentally, emotionally. He barely spoke to her unless it involved the kids, and even then, his words were clipped and formal. One night, as they sat across from each other at the dinner table with the kids laughing between them, Emily flashed him a smug smile, as if to say, "See? We're still a family. You'll never actually go through with it, But Robert just met her gaze with an icy stare. She wasn't winning. She was delaying the inevitable. What she didn't know was that every day, he was one step closer to making sure she had no choice but to face reality. As the weeks passed, Emily remained convinced that Robert's anger was temporary. She told herself he was just being stubborn, that once the baby arrived, he would see things differently. He had always been the reliable one, the problem solver, the man who put his family first. In her mind, that meant he would never actually go through with the divorce. But something else was bothering her, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. Jessica and Mark had changed. At first, it was subtle. Jessica's usual excitement had dimmed, her texts becoming shorter, her calls less frequent. When they did talk, Jessica seemed preoccupied, brushing off conversations about the pregnancy or dodging Emily's questions about how they were preparing for the baby's arrival. Then there was Mark. He had once been so involved, eager to discuss doctor's appointments, nursery plans, and baby names. But now? He was constantly busy. He had missed the last 2 ultrasound appointments, each time sending a last-minute excuse about work. One evening, Emily sat on the couch, her swollen belly making it difficult to get comfortable. She dialed Jessica's number, expecting the usual sisterly enthusiasm, but instead, Jessica barely sounded present. "Hey, Jess, I haven't heard from you much. Everything okay?" There was a long pause before Jessica finally answered. "Yeah, I've just been dealing with a lot." Emily frowned. "Like what?" "Nothing you need to worry about," Jessica said quickly. "How's the pregnancy going?" Emily hesitated. It was the first time in months Jessica had actually asked about it. Something about her tone felt off, like she was forcing herself to sound interested. "It's fine," Emily said slowly. "Baby's healthy. I thought you'd be more involved, you know." Jessica sighed, her voice tight. "Emily, I appreciate everything you're doing, but you have to understand, this is hard for me too, Emily blinked. "Hard for you?" "Jessica, I'm the one carrying your child." "I know that," Jessica snapped. Then, as if realizing how harsh she sounded, she softened. "Look, I just have a lot on my plate right now. Mark's been distant. Things aren't exactly perfect between us." Emily sat up straighter, her heart pounding. "What do you mean? What's going on with Mark?" Jessica hesitated again, and Emily knew, she was hiding something, "I don't want to talk about it," Jessica said finally. "I just need some space, okay?" Emily opened her mouth to argue, to demand an answer, but the line went dead. She stared at her phone, confusion and frustration building inside her. Something wasn't right. The same sister who had begged her to do this, who had called every single day with excitement, was now avoiding her. And Mark? His absence wasn't just about work. Emily could feel it in her gut. He was pulling away too. For the first time since all of this started, doubt crept into her mind. Had she made a mistake? Emily couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that something was wrong. Jessica's distant attitude, Mark's increasing absences, none of it made sense. They had fought so hard for this baby. It was supposed to be the happiest time of their lives. So why did it feel like everything was unraveling? Her answer came late one evening. She had just settled into bed when her phone buzzed. Jessica. Emily answered immediately, but before she could say a word, Jessica's voice came through, raw and broken. I swear to God, if he thinks I don't know, he's stupid. Emily sat up, heart pounding. Jessica, what's going on? A bitter laugh crackled through the speaker. Mark. He's been texting someone else. Emily froze. What? Are you sure? Jessica sniffed, anger and heartbreak lacing her words. I saw the messages, Em. Right there on his phone. Some business trip excuse, but it was all lies. He's been sneaking around for weeks. Emily swallowed, her stomach twisting. Did you confront him? Jessica let out a shaky breath. Of course I did. And you know what he said? He told me I've been obsessing over the baby and ignoring him. Her voice cracked. Like this wasn't supposed to be our dream. Emily's fingers curled into the bedsheet. Mark was cheating, the man she had agreed to carry a child for, the man who had promised her sister a family, was out there betraying her. And yet, somewhere in the back of her mind, something else gnawed at her, a feeling she couldn't quite place. Jess, I'm so sorry, she said quietly. You don't deserve this. Jessica sighed heavily. I don't know how to fix this. Emily hesitated. Do you still want this baby? Silence. A long, painful silence. Finally, Jessica whispered, I don't know, The words hit Emily like a gut punch. You don't know, she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. Jess, this is your baby. The whole reason I know what I said, Emily. Jessica snapped. Then, in a softer, almost regretful tone, she added, I just didn't think things would turn out like this, Emily's mind reeled. This wasn't part of the plan. Jessica had been the one who had begged her to do this. Who had called it the greatest gift a sister could give. But now, with her marriage falling apart, she was questioning it. Tears burned in Emily's eyes. I gave up everything for you, Jessica. My marriage. My stability. And now you're telling me you don't even know if you want this child? Jessica's next words sliced through her like a blade. I thought you were strong enough to handle this on your own, Emily's breath hitched. She felt as if she had been slapped. Jessica kept talking, but Emily wasn't listening anymore. She could hear the truth buried beneath the excuses, beneath the regret. Jessica had never truly considered how this would affect her. She had used her. A numbness spread through Emily's chest. She had spent months convincing herself that this sacrifice meant something, that she was part of something beautiful, something bigger than herself. But now? Now she felt utterly disposable. Emily sat in the living room, staring blankly at her phone. The conversation with Jessica replayed in her mind over and over again, each word cutting deeper than the last. I thought you were strong enough to handle this on your own, the weight of it pressed down on her, suffocating. For the first time since this all began, she felt truly alone. Jessica was pulling away, Mark was barely around, and Robert was gone in every way that mattered. She glanced toward the kitchen, where he stood making coffee, his movements calm, deliberate, unaffected. The sight of him used to bring comfort. Now, it filled her with panic. Robert had barely spoken to her in weeks. He still lived in the house for the sake of the kids, but he treated her like nothing more than a ghost in the background. There were no more lingering glances, no more tired smiles after a long day, no more casual touches. It was like she had already disappeared from his life. She couldn't stand it. One evening, as he was washing dishes, she casually leaned against the counter beside him. "I was thinking," she said lightly, "maybe we should take the kids out this weekend. You know, like old times." Robert didn't even look at her. "I have plans." She frowned. "With who?" He finally turned his head, giving her a cold, unreadable stare. "It doesn't matter." A flicker of irritation burned in her chest. "Robert, we don't have to do this. We don't have to throw everything away." He let out a short, humorless laugh. "You already did." Emily's stomach twisted. "I made a mistake," she admitted, her voice quieter now. "I should have talked to you first. But we can fix this." Robert dried his hands with a towel, looking at her for a long moment before shaking his head. "No, Emily. You can't fix this. Because I don't trust you anymore." Her breath hitched, her heart hammering in her chest. She reached for him instinctively, but he stepped back, out of her reach, out of her life. That's when she knew he was really done. Emily gripped the edge of the bathroom sink, gasping as another sharp pain shot through her abdomen. She had been feeling contractions for the past hour, but now they were coming harder, faster. Panic settled deep in her chest. She wasn't ready. Not for this. Not alone. With shaky hands, she grabbed her phone and dialed the first number that came to mind, **Robert***. The line rang once. Twice. Then went straight to voicemail. Her breath hitched. She redialed, pressing the phone to her ear, willing him to answer. Nothing. Tears burned in her eyes as she hung up and scrolled through her contacts. Jessica. She would come. She had to come. Emily pressed the call button, but this time, the phone barely rang before going to voicemail. Frustration surged through her. She dialed again, her hands trembling. Pick up. Please, Jess, pick up, **. After the third attempt, she gave up and called Mark. Emily? His voice sounded hesitant, distracted. I'm in labor, she gasped, another contraction making her double over. I need someone to take me to the hospital. Silence. A long, agonizing silence. Then Mark sighed. Emily, this really isn't a good time. Her mind reeled. Not a good time, she repeated, voice rising in disbelief. Mark, I'm about to have your child. I need help. I'm sorry, he stammered. Jessica and I are in the middle of something right now. She found more messages. Emily felt like she had been punched in the gut. Of course. Jessica had caught him cheating again. And in that moment, Emily finally understood, she had never been a priority to them. She was just a means to an end. Another contraction ripped through her, forcing her to her knees. Tears streamed down her face as she clutched her belly, the painful realization hitting her harder than the labor itself. She had no one. Emily lay in the hospital bed, exhausted, drained, and completely alone. The sterile white walls around her felt cold, impersonal, and suffocating. The baby, Mark and Jessica's baby, lay swaddled in a bassinet beside her, tiny and oblivious to the chaos that surrounded their existence. Emily should have felt something. Relief, maybe. Or even joy. But all she felt was emptiness. The contractions had been unbearable, the delivery long and grueling, and yet the worst pain wasn't physical. It was the crushing realization that no one had been there for her, no comforting hand to hold, no soft words of encouragement, no proud father waiting eagerly for his child to arrive. Jessica hadn't shown up. Mark hadn't shown up. Robert, well, she knew better than to even expect him. But now, Mark was finally here, standing at the foot of her bed, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Jessica was beside him, arms flailing as she hissed, "What the hell is wrong with you?" Emily barely had the strength to turn her head, but she could feel the tension radiating off Jessica in waves. Mark didn't flinch. His voice was calm, too calm, and that terrified Emily. I want a paternity test before I sign anything. Jessica's face contorted with rage. Asterisk, are you kidding me? Asterisk. Emily felt the words like a blade to the chest. Her throat went dry. You, what? Mark sighed, rubbing a hand down his face like this conversation was inconvenient for him. Look, I'm not saying the baby isn't mine. But after everything that's happened, I just need to be sure. Jessica's jaw dropped. You know she didn't cheat on you, Mark. This entire pregnancy has been planned down to the damn procedure. Emily's hands trembled as she clutched the blanket over her lap. I went through hell for you, she whispered, voice raw, barely above a breath. And now you're questioning me? Mark didn't even look at her. I just need to be certain. Emily let out a strangled laugh, but there was no humor in it. She had sacrificed everything for this child, for her sister, for the family they had all claimed to want. And now, at the finish line, Mark was treating her like some untrustworthy stranger. Jessica shoved him hard in the chest. You're disgusting. Mark barely stumbled, shaking his head. You don't get it, Jess. With our marriage in the state it's in, I'm not going to put my name on anything unless I have proof. Emily felt like she was falling, spiraling into nothingness. She had always assumed that once the baby was born, everything would fall into place. That Jessica would finally be grateful, that Mark would finally step up, that maybe, just maybe, she would feel whole again. But now, she saw it for what it was. A mistake. A terrible, irreversible mistake. Emily sat in the dim hospital room, the newborn cradled in her arms, his tiny fingers curling and uncurling against the blanket. He was so small, so helpless, so unaware of the chaos that had surrounded his existence before he had even taken his first breath. She had imagined this moment differently. She had pictured Jessica crying happy tears, Mark beaming with pride, and herself feeling a profound sense of purpose, knowing she had done something meaningful for her sister. But reality had crushed those fantasies. Jessica had stormed out after her fight with Mark, too furious to even look at Emily. Mark, after demanding a paternity test, had left shortly after, mumbling something about needing to clear his head. Emily hadn't heard from either of them since. She was alone. Tears blurred her vision as she clutched the baby closer. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. She had ruined everything, her marriage, her stability, her relationship with Robert, all for people who had discarded her the moment things got complicated. Jessica had used her. Mark had disrespected her. And Robert. A sob broke free from her throat. Robert had been right all along. She knew she had no right to call him, but in that moment, he was the only person she could think of. The only one who had truly known her, who had once cared for her more than anyone. Maybe, just maybe, there was a shred of warmth left in his heart for her. Maybe he would still save her. With trembling hands, she grabbed her phone and dialed his number. It rang. And rang. And rang. Her heart pounded in her chest. Please, just pick up. Then, finally, the line clicked. What do you want, Emily? His voice was calm, steady. Cold. Emily broke down completely. I don't know what to do, she sobbed. Robert, Jessica's gone, Mark won't even sign the birth certificate, and I'm here alone with the baby, and He was silent. Completely, utterly silent. Please, she begged, gripping the phone like a lifeline. I need someone right now. I don't have anyone else. Robert finally exhaled, slow and controlled. Then he said the words that shattered her completely. You told me it was your body, your choice. Now, this is my life, my choice. Her breath hitched. Robert, please. I warned you, he said simply. You didn't care then. Why should I care now? Tears streamed down her face. I made a mistake. You made your choice, Robert said, his voice unwavering. Now you get to live with it. The line went dead. Emily stared at the screen, her entire body trembling. The finality of it hit her like a freight train. Robert wasn't coming. No one was. And for the first time, she truly understood what she had done. The courtroom was silent except for the occasional shuffle of papers and the low murmur of attorneys consulting their notes. Robert sat at the plaintiff's table, his expression unreadable, his hands folded neatly in front of him. Across the room, Emily sat stiffly beside her lawyer, looking smaller than he had ever seen her. She looked tired, more than tired. The weight of everything she had lost seemed to press down on her, her once confident posture replaced by something fragile, almost hollow. But Robert felt nothing. Not pity, not regret. Just resolve. The judge cleared his throat, glancing between the two of them before delivering the decision that Robert had been waiting for. After reviewing the evidence, the court finds that the plaintiff, Robert Carter, has provided a stable and consistent environment for the minor children. Given the circumstances surrounding the dissolution of marriage and the absence of substantial financial or emotional support from the respondent, full legal and physical custody of the children is awarded to Mr. Carter. Emily's breath hitched audibly. She turned to her attorney, eyes wide, as if begging for some kind of lifeline. But there was nothing left to argue. Robert didn't react. No sigh of relief, no triumphant smile, just a slow nod. He had prepared himself for this, for the final step in taking back his life. The judge continued. Visitation rights will be granted to Ms. Carter under a structured schedule. However, due to financial instability and the lack of a suitable living arrangement, child support obligations will not be imposed on the plaintiff at this time. Emily visibly flinched. Robert watched her fingers tighten around the edge of the table, her knuckles turning white. She opened her mouth to speak, then quickly shut it, her throat working as if trying to swallow her own emotions. The gavel came down. It was done. Emily sat there frozen as the reality settled in. No husband. No home. No financial help from the sister and brother-in-law she had sacrificed everything for. Nothing. As Robert stood to leave, Emily finally whispered, "Robert, please, can we talk?" He didn't even look at her. She was just another consequence of her own choices now. Without a word, he walked out of the courtroom, leaving her sitting there in the wreckage of what she had done. Emily stood outside Robert's house, the evening air cool against her skin, but the cold she felt ran much deeper. She hesitated before knocking, her heart pounding against her ribs. The house still looked the same, the home they had built together, the place where they had once been happy. But she knew she no longer belonged here. When the door finally opened, Robert stood there, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. He looked stronger now, more at peace. The exhaustion and pain that had once weighed him down were gone, replaced by something solid, unshakable. Emily swallowed hard. "Robert, I just wanted to talk." He didn't move, didn't invite her in. "We have nothing to talk about." She clenched her fingers together, desperation creeping into her voice. "I know I messed up. I should have listened to you. I should have." Robert cut her off. "Should have? Yeah, you should have, but you didn't. And now, here we are." Tears burned at the back of her eyes. "I lost everything, Robert." He let out a slow breath, shaking his head. "No, Emily. You threw everything away." Her lower lip trembled. "Please, just... I don't know how to fix this." Robert's expression remained cold, detached. "That's not my problem anymore." For a brief moment, Emily thought he might soften, that maybe there was still a shred of the man who used to love her. But then he did the one thing that shattered what was left of her hope. He closed the door in her face. She stood there, staring at the wood grain, knowing with absolute certainty that this was the end. From the backyard, she could hear laughter, Robert's laughter, the kids giggling along with him, She stepped back, walking around the side of the house, peeking through the wooden fence. There he was, sitting on the grass, his arms wrapped around their children as they tumbled over him, squealing with joy. He looked happy. For the first time in months, he looked truly free. Emily wiped at her face, but the tears kept falling. She had made so many mistakes, told herself so many lies. But now, watching the life she had destroyed move on without her, she finally understood. She hadn't just lost Robert. She had lost everything. Emily walked away from Robert's house, her steps slow, unsteady, like a woman carrying the weight of every choice she had made. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over everything, but she felt no warmth. She had spent months convincing herself that she had been right, that Robert would come around, that Jessica would always be there for her, that Mark would step up. But now, standing in the wreckage of her decisions, she saw the truth. She had burned every bridge, and there was no going back. Robert had made it clear. He wasn't bitter. He wasn't angry. He was just done. He had fought for their marriage at first, tried to make her see what she was doing, tried to reason with her. But when she had dismissed him, belittled his feelings, made it clear that his opinion didn't matter, he had chosen himself, and in the end, that was the greatest lesson of all. Some choices can't be undone. Some betrayals can't be forgiven. As she turned the corner, leaving behind the home that was no longer hers, she thought about what Robert had said the last time they spoke. You told me it was your body, your choice. Now, this is my life, my choice. He had chosen a future without her. A future where his respect wasn't discarded, where his voice mattered. A future where he was free. And for the first time, Emily understood why. If your partner made a life-changing decision without you, would you fight for them, or would you walk away like Robert did? Because at the end of the day, trust is the foundation of every relationship. Break it, and you may never rebuild it. Choose your actions wisely, because once respect is gone, so is everything else.